I gave him 15 years. 15 years of loyalty, sacrifice, and silence. While I raised our kids, he chased fantasies. While I budgeted groceries, he bought spa weekends for another woman. I stayed through the eye rolls, the distance, the late-night lies, because I believed love meant enduring. But he didn't just break my heart. He stole our future. He looked me in the eye and thought I'd stay blind. He thought I'd fold, cry, beg. He didn't know I was building something. Something stronger than heartbreak. Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is the story of how I stopped crying, took control, and reminded him exactly who he married. They say betrayal comes in many forms, but nothing prepares you for the moment you realize the person sleeping beside you for the past 15 years has been living a double life. Not just lies whispered in the dark, but full-blown manipulation cloaked in routine. It started on a Tuesday morning. The kids were at school, and I was cleaning out the laundry room. Nothing special, just folding his socks and smiling faintly at the thought of him finally getting a few days off for the guys' road trip he'd been planning for months. He left that morning with a hug, a kiss on my forehead, and a "don't wait up." I stood in the driveway, waving goodbye as his truck disappeared down the road, trusting every word he said. Until I opened the dryer and found the receipt. A crisp hotel receipt, stuffed into the back pocket of his cargo shorts, dated for a weekend just 2 weeks ago. Not for a roadside inn with his buddies, no. It was a luxury spa resort in Santa Fe, a king suite, 2 guests, a couple's massage package. My first reaction wasn't even anger. It was a slow, crawling numbness, the kind that settles into your bones and makes your fingers shake. I sat on the floor, surrounded by fresh laundry and stale silence, gripping that receipt like it might explain itself if I stared hard enough. He hadn't been on any road trip. That was obvious now. But the worst part? It wasn't the receipt, or even the betrayal. It was the voice inside me that whispered, "You already knew." I'd ignored the signs, the sudden password locks on his phone, the new cologne, the business trips that ran longer than usual. The way he stopped looking at me during dinner. How he'd roll his eyes when I brought up family plans or weekend getaways. For months, I convinced myself I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, that if I just stayed quiet, things would return to normal. But betrayal doesn't knock. It kicks the door in and stares you in the face. I stood up, brushing off the dust from my knees, receipt still in hand, and walked straight to the kitchen drawer where I kept the bills. My hands moved before my thoughts could catch up, yanking open files, flipping through envelopes, bank statements, and credit card bills. And there it was. Hotel charges from Denver, San Diego, Scottsdale, each on weekends when he claimed to be at work conferences or out of town with friends. My marriage was built on lies. My life, too. It felt like someone had pulled the rug out from under me, and now I was falling in slow motion, watching the years we spent together blur past me. Our wedding vows, the night we brought our daughter home from the hospital, every Christmas dinner, every anniversary toast. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, I made a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the receipt like it was a puzzle piece that finally made the whole picture clear. And in that moment, something in me shifted. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I wasn't going to fall apart while he played house with someone else behind my back. I had given this man everything. My love, my loyalty, my time, my body, my best years. And this is what he gave me in return? No. I would find out the whole truth, not just pieces. I wanted the full, ugly story, and once I had it, I would take back what was mine. I wasn't going to be the clueless wife crying into a pillow. I was going to be the reckoning he never saw coming. And it all started with that one slip. A forgotten receipt. The mask was off. Now it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of grief, not yet. What kept me awake was the sheer weight of the realization. How deep the betrayal went. How far back it must have started, and how masterfully he'd played me. Every smile, every "I love you," every time he walked through that door pretending to be tired from work, it had all been scripted, calculated, cold. He wasn't just cheating. He was building another life, piece by piece, right under my nose. The next morning, I dropped the kids off at school like nothing had changed. I packed their lunches, kissed their foreheads, waved them off, and all the while, I felt like I was watching myself from somewhere outside my body. On the surface, I looked like any other suburban wife going about her routine. But inside, I was unraveling. I had spent nearly 2 decades of my life supporting this man. I gave up my career to raise our children. I managed our home, organized every holiday, kept our family together through every storm. And now, all I had left to show for it was a pile of bills, a cheating husband, and a home filled with silence and suspicion. By 10 a.m., I'd called into work and said I wouldn't be coming in. I needed time to think, to piece it all together, to map out what I was really dealing with. I started digging. I pulled up our shared bank accounts and printed out the past 12 months of statements. I compared the hotel stays with his work calendar marked dates with red ink. Each one was a nail in the coffin. Spa packages, fancy restaurants, jewelry stores I'd never set foot in, plane tickets I never knew he bought. Then I checked his phone bill. I knew he'd deleted texts, but the call logs? He wasn't careful there. There was one number that kept popping up almost daily. Morning calls, midnight calls, long calls, that sometimes went on for over an hour. I copied the number and dialed it from my phone. It rang twice, then a soft young voice answered. "Hello?" I didn't speak. I just listened. Her tone was sweet, almost innocent, like someone who didn't know or didn't care that she was a wrecking ball in someone else's life. I hung up. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed more. Something irrefutable. So I went to the closet and opened his drawer. That's where he always kept his travel bags. I pulled out one and unzipped it slowly, like it might bite. Inside were toiletries, receipts, and a small box, blue velvet, slightly worn at the edges. My breath caught in my throat. It was a ring box. I opened it and saw a delicate diamond band. Not mine, not my style. It was thin, dainty, meant for someone younger, someone who had no history with him, no stretch marks, no years of sacrifice carved into her skin. I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the ring. He was going to propose to her. I wasn't just dealing with a fling. This was premeditated. He was planning a future with her, while I stayed home, taking care of his kids and believing every lie he fed me. He wasn't on a road trip with the boys. He was out somewhere, probably with her, maybe even slipping that ring on her finger. And all the while, I was here, alone, forgotten. No more. I realized then that I had 2 choices. I could collapse under the weight of it all, let him destroy what was left of me. Or I could rebuild from the ashes and make damn sure he regretted ever underestimating me. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about respect. About everything he tried to take from me. My dignity, my stability, my sense of self. He had spent months, maybe years, lying to my face. But I'd spent those same years becoming a woman who could survive the storm. A woman who knew how to fight when cornered. And now I was cornered, which meant it was time to start fighting. The ring stayed on the nightstand for 2 days. I couldn't bring myself to touch it again. Just seeing it there, glinting in the light like some cruel joke, was enough to keep my chest in a permanent state of pressure. But I left it there for a reason. Every time I looked at it, it reminded me why I couldn't back down. Why this betrayal wasn't something I could simply walk away from. This wasn't just about a broken heart or a failed marriage. This was about my life, my children's lives. Everything I'd built was under silent attack, and if I didn't act now, he would burn it all down behind my back and walk away with a smile. The real punch to the gut came later that week when I went to pay the mortgage. The account was empty, not drained entirely, but far less than what should have been there. I sat there staring at the screen, mouth dry, heart pounding, clicking through the transaction history like it might somehow make sense. It didn't. Thousands were missing, pulled in small increments, spread across multiple weeks, each withdrawal, just small enough to avoid raising suspicion. He hadn't just been cheating with his body, he'd been cheating with our finances, slowly bleeding us dry while telling me everything was fine. I opened the drawer and pulled out the household budget folder I'd maintained for years. Every bill, every receipt, every month meticulously recorded. I wasn't stupid. I'd always kept track. But somewhere along the line, I stopped double-checking the joint accounts. I trusted him. That was my mistake. And he counted on that. He thought I wouldn't notice. He thought I wouldn't question him. And maybe, if he'd just stuck to the affair, I would have walked away quietly. But this was theft. Deception with consequences. Real consequences. My daughter Emma was applying to colleges. We'd promised her a safety net, enough to cover at least her first year wherever she got accepted. That money was supposed to be there. We talked about it for years, and now it was gone. Just like that. I imagined her opening an acceptance letter with joy, only to find out we couldn't help her like we promised, all because her father was too busy pretending to be in love with someone else. I pictured our son Ben asking me if he could sign up for that baseball camp he'd been dreaming about for a year, and I'd have to lie, or worse, tell him the truth. Your dad chose someone else over all of us. No. That wasn't going to happen. This mattered because it wasn't just about me. It was about what kind of woman I wanted to be, and what kind of mother my children deserved. I wasn't going to let them learn that love meant being walked over, that loyalty meant silence, that a man could tear his family apart and suffer no consequences because the woman he left behind was too broken to fight. I had to fight. And as I sat there, staring at the transaction list and the missing digits, I stopped crying. The tears dried up. The shaking in my hands settled. Because clarity had finally taken root. He was building a new life. I saw it in every hotel charge, every flower delivery to an unfamiliar address, every phone call made after midnight. He wanted a fresh start, with someone new, and in his mind, I was just the baggage he needed to toss aside. But I wasn't baggage. I was the foundation, the woman who built his entire life, who raised his children and sacrificed her own dreams to make sure his came true. He wanted to start over? Fine. But not with my money, not with my silence, not at the cost of our children's future, not without feeling what it was like to be left with nothing but regret. He had made a mistake, one that was about to cost him everything. There's something terrifying about a woman who stops crying. Something final. Something focused. The moment my tears dried, a cold, controlled calm settled over me. And in that silence, I began to plan. Not for revenge, not for some petty payback, but for justice. Real, deliberate, and clean. First, I needed proof. Not just receipts or phone logs. Those were helpful, yes. But I needed undeniable, legally admissible proof that would stand up in court. Because now this wasn't just an affair. It was financial deception, marital theft, emotional abandonment. I wasn't going to just throw a fit. I was going to build a case. I started by doing something I should have done months ago. I stopped protecting him. I reached out to Marlene, my closest friend. Not just a casual brunch partner, but someone who knew every corner of my life, every crack in my marriage. I told her everything, every receipt, every call, the ring, the drained accounts. For the first time in weeks, I said the words out loud. He's cheating, and he's stealing. She didn't flinch, didn't say, I told you so. Instead, she nodded and said, then let's burn it all down, the smart way. Marlene connected me with a divorce attorney, one with a sharp mind and zero patience for manipulation. A woman who had seen it all and didn't sugarcoat a damn thing. She told me exactly what I needed to do. First, stop using the joint accounts immediately. Second, open a separate bank account in my name only. Deposit any incoming funds directly into that account, including my paycheck. Third, start documenting everything. Every suspicious transaction, every lie, every communication. Fourth, stay quiet. Don't confront him yet. Don't let him know. I knew. Because the moment he found out I was aware, he'd change passwords, hide assets, maybe even disappear altogether. So I played my part. I sent him good morning texts like I always did. I asked about his road trip. I told him the kids missed him. I even threw in a "can't wait for you to come home" on day 3, just to keep the mask from slipping. Meanwhile, I got to work. I combed through every financial document I could find. I took pictures of the ring, the hotel receipts, the spa booking confirmation, and printed the call logs. I started syncing up his trips with his credit card charges and even pulled records from the cloud backup of his phone that he thought I didn't know existed. He'd left it logged in on an old iPad he forgot we had. That was the gold mine. Photos. Messages, voice memos, conversations with her that made my skin crawl, him calling her baby, her talking about our future, her saying she couldn't wait to meet the kids once things were finalized. I almost threw the iPad across the room, but instead I forwarded it all to my email, labeled, categorized, saved to a secure drive. He had no idea I had built a war chest. My lawyer told me exactly how to position everything in court, how to prove dissipation of marital assets, how to request full custody, how to file an emergency motion to freeze the accounts so he couldn't move any more money out. I also made one more call. To our financial advisor, the same man we'd been working with for years. He always liked me, trusted me. And when I told him about the missing funds and asked if he'd noticed anything odd, he hesitated just long enough for me to know he had. He promised to pull the last 6 months of portfolio movement for me and flag anything that looks unusual. By day 5 of my husband's road trip, I wasn't broken anymore. I was armed. I had the documents, the bank evidence, the text messages, the photos, the names, the numbers, and most importantly, I had the law on my side. I wasn't waiting around for him to come clean. I was preparing to wipe the floor with him. Because when you spend your life building a home, a family, a future, you don't walk away quietly when someone tries to burn it all down. You bring the fire yourself. The night he came back, I almost laughed. He walked through the door wearing a Road Trip 2024 hoodie and a sheepish grin, like some teenager coming back from summer camp. He dropped his bag by the door, wrapped his arms around me, and muttered, "I missed you." The audacity. But I didn't flinch. I leaned into the hug, smiled back, and whispered, "Me too." Because the plan wasn't finished yet. Over the day. Next week, I became 2 versions of myself. The one he saw, loving wife, warm, slightly clueless. I asked about his trip, nodded through his half-baked stories, and even laughed at his stupid jokes. I cooked dinner. I tucked the kids into bed. I let him believe everything was as it always was. But behind the scenes, I was 3 steps ahead of him. Every morning after he left for work, I'd open my laptop and meet with my lawyer via video call. Every document I'd gathered was now part of an official legal strategy. We were preparing to file for divorce, yes, but not just any divorce. One that would expose every hidden dollar, every shady withdrawal, and every lie. We began the process of subpoenaing his financial records and requesting access to accounts he thought I didn't know about, including one in a fake LLC name he set up to hide side income. Apparently, Mr. Road Trip had been moving money under the table for months, maybe longer. My lawyer filed a motion to freeze all major marital assets pending investigation. Our financial advisor backed it. The judge approved it. He wouldn't find out until the bank called him. I also secured exclusive temporary custody of the children. Why? Because I had the texts where he said to his mistress, "I'm done with the family stuff. Once I move out, I don't want full custody. I just want peace." My lawyer nearly spit out her coffee when she read it. We had it all documented. His intention to abandon his children, his infidelity, his financial abuse, his covert attempts to move assets. It wasn't just grounds for divorce. It was grounds for a court reckoning. Then I made sure to prepare the house. I changed the locks on the home office. That's where I stored all the legal paperwork, printed photos, and USB backups. I installed a small safe in the closet, password protected, hidden behind a box of old toys. I even started recording select conversations on my phone, just in case he said anything incriminating when he started to feel the heat. He noticed nothing. He was too busy texting her. I watched him out of the corner of my eye, smiling at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, stepping outside for air and whispering like a love-struck teenager. I was disgusted, but I stayed quiet because I had one final play. One evening, I sat down with our children, gently, age-appropriately. I told them the truth, not all the ugly parts, but just enough. That Daddy had made choices that hurt our family, that things were going to change, that Mommy had a plan to keep them safe and happy. They cried. Of course they did. But I held them and made them a promise. I would not let him hurt them again. And then finally, I confronted him. Not with screaming, not with tears, with paperwork. I handed him the folder, thick and heavy, and sat across the kitchen table while he flipped through every page. His face went pale. His mouth opened and closed, like a fish out of water. "This is," he started. "It's everything," I cut in. "Every lie, every transaction, every name, every photo. The judge already has a copy. So does your employer, and your lawyer, because mine has already reached out." He didn't speak for a long time, just sat there. I could see the walls closing in. All those nights he thought I was asleep? I was building this moment. All the gaslighting, the condescension, the stolen money, the other woman, laid out in black and white. He had no idea who he was married to. I wasn't some fragile housewife sobbing into a wine glass. I was the woman who watched him burn down our life and then rebuilt it while he wasn't looking. He sat there with the folder open, staring at the evidence like it might disappear if he blinked hard enough. But it didn't. It was all real. Every transaction, every lie, every word he thought he could bury under a weak excuse and a smile. I stood in silence, watching him fall apart inch by inch. Not with violence, not with drama, just the quiet, sharp unraveling of a man who finally realized he had lost control. "You were never supposed to find out," he muttered. That's what he said first. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "Let me explain." Just that, like I was the problem for discovering the truth. I remember laughing, a small bitter sound that came from a place so deep I didn't even recognize it. "You think this is about finding out?" I said. "This is about you thinking I'd never be smart enough, brave enough, strong enough." His jaw clenched. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. "Save it," I snapped. "You meant to live a double life. You meant to take our money and lie to our children. You meant to propose to someone else while keeping me in this house, doing your laundry and making dinner. Don't insult me by pretending it was an accident." He stood up, fists curled, breathing hard like he might yell. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. "Sit down," I said, voice low but steady. "You're going to listen now." I laid out what would happen next. The divorce was filed, the accounts were frozen. His employer had been contacted, and the financial fraud was being reviewed by a legal team. His mistress? Her name had been shared in the motion. Her involvement meant she might be subpoenaed, especially if any of the funds had been gifted to her, because that would legally count as the dissipation of marital assets. And as for the kids, temporary custody was mine, and I was filing for full custody based on his own written words, the ones he so carelessly texted when he thought no one was watching. "I gave you everything," I said quietly, "and you gave me betrayal." He said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. That night, he packed a duffel bag and left. He didn't slam the door or shout. He just walked out, defeated, carrying the weight of every selfish decision he had ever made. I watched him go from the window, and instead of feeling shattered, I felt still. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't living in confusion or fear. I wasn't second-guessing myself or shrinking to make space for someone else's ego. I was standing in my own truth, and it felt like freedom. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Divorce never is. There were hearings, mediations, emails, flying back and forth between attorneys. But I was ready. Every time he tried to manipulate the narrative, I had the receipts. Every lie was met with evidence. Every attempt at sympathy was countered with facts. I wasn't vengeful. I was prepared. And that made all the difference. In the end, the judge awarded me primary custody, with supervised visitation for him until he could prove a stable environment. The house remained mine. The frozen accounts were divided fairly, but with the court's acknowledgement that he had intentionally hidden assets, which meant I received a greater share. His new relationship didn't survive the storm. She bailed. When the subpoenas came. And him? Last I heard, he moved into a one-bedroom apartment across town. No more weekend spa getaways, no more secret hotel suites, just him and the echo of everything he threw away. And me? I was rebuilding. Slowly, yes, but this time with intention. Enrolled in night classes to finish my degree. Started a small part-time job that made me feel like me again, not someone's wife or someone's mother, but a woman with dreams of her own. The kids are doing better. We talk more, laugh more, cry less. Every now and then, I find myself staring at the empty side of the bed. There are moments when the loneliness creeps in, when I remember what it felt like to be loved, even if it was a lie. But then I remember the strength it took to stand up, to say no more, to take control. I didn't just survive betrayal, I conquered it. And if he ever looks back, I hope he sees this clearly. I was the best thing he ever had, and he lost me because he thought I would stay small, quiet, blind. But I saw everything. And I walked away with my head high, my children beside me, and my future, finally in my own hands.